Hello all, good evening developers, good evening aspirants, good evening each and every viewer out there who's looking for another video on SAPUI5 Fiori. So guys, welcome to another session with me, Varun, on TechTablet. And if in case you've been liking my videos, you can follow me on my Facebook or on my Instagram on the IDs mentioned below, which is Varun Rao _Gemini at yahoo.com if it is Facebook, and Varun Rao _Gemini if it is Insta. Well, in this specific video, we would be looking at how to develop analytical views in SAP UI5 Fiori. Now, I would make myself very clear once again. It would be analytical views, guys. It's not an analytical application. Now, what is the difference between a view and a basic application is a query that a lot of people have asked me. When you talk about a view, you're restricting the size of the folder only to an index.html, a view.xml, and a controller.js. But then when you talk about creating an application, there are also a lot of other configuration files that go along with it, like index.html, component.js, manifest.json, view.xml, controller.js, multiple views and multiple controllers. So this is what makes an application and a view. And in an application, you further have your routing channels defined, you have your navigation channel preset, you have your data that's coming in. So there is a lot that happens when you call it to be an application, right? So we would be looking at a very simple analytical view, right? So how to create, what are the different elements to use from the SDK and create a view. And the example or the variant that we would be looking is a pie chart, right? And as you all know, guys, this is me, Varun Rao, and I have a total experience on abap and SAP and the latest technologies. My total experience is for 5 years, and well, guys, this is me here. Hi all, and I'm currently on my preliminary stages of machine learning, IoT, AI, Python, deep learning. I'm not sure where this would take me to, if it would be data science or if it would be SAP Leonardo. I'm not very sure where this journey would end up, but then yes, I'm just learning as many things as possible to the best of my abilities, with the best of the enthusiasm that I can carry with myself, and I'm also trying to reciprocate a bit of it at regular intervals so that at least some of us, or at least some of you, can gain help, or at least some of you can have a basic understanding of what different modules are, right? So welcome to another session, guys, and in this specific video we'll understand what is the agenda of this specific video. It is to develop a very simple analytical view, right? Now, when we talk about an analytical view, now we know what are the different things that are involved in an analytical view. So the first one would be an XML view. The second thing that you should know is the controller would be in JavaScript. And the third thing is the data set, that is the data that I'm consuming, would also be in JavaScript. So it would be a very small data set that I would be taking within the JavaScript only. But then what is the most important thing here in that case? The most important thing is how to use the libraries. So I would request you to open your SDK, right, and use the pause button regularly, because when we are creating an application, let us say we are using the SAPUI library, and if I want to create a pie chart, I want you to pause the video to have a personal understanding and then cross-check with yourself. I think that would be a best way to practice and also to learn, right? So the different libraries used are sap.viz and sap.m. Now, without wasting time, quickly let me take you to the Eclipse IDE. Well, this is the Eclipse IDE, guys, right? So this is a completely offline mode of development that we have available. These on the left are all the projects that I've created, okay? And now we would be creating another project right here. Well, I don't think I am required to be, my visibility is very important right now. So let me just cut that off, and we'll save that space for Eclipse. So now what I'll do is, let me just quickly go ahead and create an application project. Now, the prerequisite when you want to create a project is an assumption that you must have installed all the required, softwares and the required, add-ons. Now, where would you find it? You can just go to find install new software, and in the install new software, you would be able to find all of them. Right now, I'm just doing this, in the help, there is an about Eclipse option. So that's what I'm doing right now. Okay. So here, as you're able to see, I have all my add-ons installed, wherein I also have my SAPUI5 and different other add-ons as per my requirement. Now, when you want to create a new project in SAPUI5 Eclipse IDE, being very specific, this is the button that you use, and it will prompt for a new application. Okay, now this is a select a wizard block wherein you will be selecting an SAPUI5 application, and you can just give it a name. Okay, just give the project a name. So I would be naming this YouTube underscore pie. Okay, because it's a pie chart that we would be creating, right? So the view would be sap.m. The library would be sap.m libraries, because now when you have sap.ui.commons and sap.m, we would be selecting sap.m because they have a set of good responsive libraries, and notwithstanding responsive libraries, they also have a lot of other features wherein the screen would be setting itself according to different devices, right? So that means a lot to each and every developer. So I would be using this, create an initial view. I would not be unchecking it and go to next. I would select a view in XML. So here you have 4 options, which is JavaScript, XML, JSON, and HTML. I would like to restrict myself to XML. So I would name my view as pie chart. That's it. Now when I do this, I would be having a view and a controller with the same name. Now I can just click on finish and it will do the thing for me. So here goes my project, guys, which is YT underscore pi. All right, and I have my YT underscore pi name here within the web content folder. It's completely formed and organized. So I have my index.html file, which is the first page, in fact, okay. And the second one is my pie chart controller.js, and my view is pie chart.view.xml. Now, just before I go ahead and add any code into this, let me just right click and check if my view, if my application is just running or not. I just want to check if I would be having a skeletal structure of my application or not. Perfect. So I have my title here. So first things first, I'll be changing the name of my title. I don't want this to be title. So I want this to be YouTube by chart. I'll save this. Now I'll go ahead and refresh this just to see if perfect. So now I think you know what is it that we're doing. Now, guys, I'll be closing the controller because I don't need my JS, I don't need my index.html right now, so I'll be closing this also. I'll be coming into my view, view.xml, right? So now what I'll have to do is I'll have to create the element which is required for the pie chart, or which is required for coming up with the graph. Okay, now when you say graph, when bar is a graph, pi is a graph, donut is a graph, so there are different graphs. So firstly, what I would be doing is, now that I have the page, I have the content, I would be taking a flex box. Okay, now whenever you take a flex box, guys, Flexbox would act very closely to a panel, but then there's a very minute difference between a Flexbox and a panel. Now, I want you to understand what is the difference between a Flexbox and a panel, and probably let us know about it. Okay. Now that the Flexbox is here with me, the next thing that I would have to take without an option is the aggregation for Flexbox. So the aggregation would be items. Now, guys, how do I know this? It's because of a very simple fact that I've been practicing this or practicing these variant of views for quite a long time, and now I know like when you talk about a table, the aggregation is columns. When you talk about a list, the aggregation is items. Now, by virtue of working on some things for some point of time, you get to know them, right? So that's exactly what's happening to me also. It's nothing XML-NS. Right, so XML-NS stands for XML namespace. So I would be using Viz libraries, right? So right? So this is the thing that I would be using, and I'll just give it an ID. An ID is very essential. Okay, and what do I name it? I'll name it as ID pie chart for now, right? And I'll also select the Viz type. Guys, now where did I get this Viz type from? Now this is a property that you should be able to find within this element. Right now, I leave that exercise of understanding the SDK up to you. All right. Now, when I save this, I'm having an error. Just pause the video for a second, and can you just guess what the error could be? Well, if you haven't been able to guess, well guys, let us just hover onto the area where I'm able to see the error. It says name, the element or attribute names do not match. Now why is that? It's because of a very simple reason or a fact that I have not defined what my viz is, right? So firstly, let me just copy this. I'll go ahead and define my viz, right? So now I'll have to give its definition. It would be sap.viz.ui5 dot controls, wherein the C should be small. Perfect. So this is the library, or this is the reference that I'll have to define. Whenever you're using, let us say you're using L for layout, you'll have to define as to what L means, failing to which you would have a problem. Okay, so let me just save this for now, and we'll see if there's any error. Okay, the error still stays. Now we'll see what the error is now that I've added my library. Well, the error is very small. It's a small typo here. I have to put this as an equal to, and now I think, yep, perfect. So now what we'll do is, let me just go ahead and see if there'll be any change here. Well, okay, at least there's no error here, right? So guys, my view is now done. For all those of you who are wondering if that is what the view is, well, yes, the view is now complete, right? So what is it that we've got to do now? So the next step that we should eventually be doing is going into the controller, right? Now this part is the most important part if you want to understand how to create analytical views, right guys? Now, when I say this part is the most important part, I would request you to understand that you don't have to by heart the kind of code, because the entire code is predefined, or the entire code is very thoroughly explained in the SDK, right? Through samples or through walkthrough or through different modes and methods. All that you've got to do is make some time and start practicing and understanding them, and trust me, your job is done, because it's pretty easy. And this example, which I'm also trying to display, is an extract of what is available in the SDK only. Right now, when you go into the controller, there are 3 to 4 important steps which you'll have to do in order to ensure that your data is being fed and that your views element is being called, right? So here we have created a view with the name flexbox, not a view. We have created an element with the name flexbox, within which I have a viz frame, and I've given an ID. So I have an option now to use the thing which is call by ID or call by reference or call by view, right? So I would be using call by ID. So I'm in the controller functionality now. So the first step that I'll have to do would be to get the ID of the viz frame. Without getting the ID of the viz frame, I would not be able to go further. Call the ID of my viz frame created in the view, right? The second thing that I would have to do would be to create a small model. Create a small data model, right? And the third thing that I'll have to do is, now that I have called my view through the ID, I have created a data set. Now I'll have to create a viz data set. Okay. Now, why is this viz data set required? It is basically to feed, it's to feed the data to the graphs. the graph rather. And the fourth step would be to set properties of this. Right. So now let us just quickly begin doing things one by one, and we'll see how the output would vary, or we'll see how we might be able to come up with certain things. So here I have my view. So firstly, for first things first, I'll have to get the idea of my wish frame, right? So how do I do that? In order to do that, I'll just create a variable and I'll give it a name like oh wish frame. So this is the name that I've given to my ID. This dot get view. Now this is a self-referencing variable which should be understood. This dot get view by ID. Now when I take an ID, guys, I would not be typing it in order to avoid any spelling mistake or in order to avoid any confusion. Rather, I'll just copy this, Control C, and I'll paste it here. Right, so the wish frame is now called, and it's called through the ID. So the second step that we have to do is to create a very small data model. And how do I do that? In order to do that, I can just take a a model instantaneously, like variable or model new. We all know what is the what is the class that we've got to write if it's a data, if it's a JSON model. So it would be new SAP.UI.model.JSON model, right? Now, why do we do this? We do this when you want to just check if your data binding is working, just to check if things are going as per the way you want, right? So I've taken a very small model here. Now I'll be creating my data set here. Okay, and within this data, the first thing that I'll be taking is a parent node, right? So how do I take a parent node, guys? I'll just have to write the name, okay, which would be sales, and within this I'll take an array and I'll be defining some variables. Okay, now how do I'll be defining some values. Now how do I do that? In order to do that, I'll start it with a comma. Okay, so within this, the first thing that I would be entering would be the drug name. Let's say Crocin, right? And the revenue that I would like to attach for this would be like 30. We'll just give it a, or probably 3.230. We'll just see for decimal values as well, right? So this is my first medicine. So I'll just copy this and make multiple copies of the same. So we'll just make 5 values of the same. 1. So this is 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Yeah. So I don't need a comma on the 5th one. So let me just delete the comma. I'll also ensure that my bracket is brought onto the top. Well, so now it's closed. Now what I've got to do is quickly change the names of medicine. So the next one would be Vicks. The next one would be Dolo. The next one would be, okay, I'm not sure of a lot of medical, a lot of tablet names, so I'll write it as a baby tablet. And the next one would probably be Thyronorm for thyroid. Okay. Now we'll just change the values. So this would be 5.80. I will now change this to 1.65. I'm not sure of the values, guys. These are totally going in as per lottery. I'm not sure what I'm entering. So yeah, it's 2.21. So yeah, here goes. So these are some values that I have entered. Now, how have I entered these values? Where did I get these values from? Totally immaterial. You've just seen all these values have been entered on the spot, and I think even you can create a very small data set just like this and start working. So now what I've got to do is instantiate it. Control V, O model dot set data. Now I want to set data to, it's not to, I want to set the data from my data, right? So this part is now complete. So we are now done with part 1 and part 2 of creating an application. Let's see if there is any difference here. Well, yes, there is a difference, and I think it's an error. Now, just to understand what that error is, we'll have to go back, inspect the page. See, it says SAP UI model, JSON model is not a constructor, SAP UI model. Okay, guys, so here goes the first error. Let us start correcting the error. So this is SAP UI model dot JSON model. So my first error seems to be corrected now. Keeping my fingers crossed, waiting to see what might go wrong. Well, it says S is not defined. Well, now this is an error which even I'm not able to understand. Now, in order to get over with this error, okay, so here it is. Well, I think this happened when we were trying to save. Now let's see what happens. Okay, so I don't have any errors, which means that there is no error, but then I also do not have data, which means that there is definitely something else missing. So what is it missing? The step 3 and step 4, that is how to create, we've created a data set and now we've got to feed the data to the graph, right? So that point is missing. Until unless you feed the data to the graph, what would the system do with this information? How would it know what is x-axis, what is y-axis? How would it know, how you want your data to be displayed, right? So that is what we're missing here right now. So let us get over with it. And in order to get over with it, the next thing that we've got to do is, guys, create your, now that you created your base data frame, you got to feed data to the graph. And how do you do that? That's pretty easy. You can just consider a small, variable for a data set, var or data set, new SAP dot this dot UI5 dot data dot flattened data set, right? So this is the data set that I would be taking, and within this I have, right, so this is the class that I would be taking, guys. Okay, and let me just close this. Okay, whenever you take a bracket or whenever you have something like this, it's always a good habit or a good practice to close them right in the beginning so that you do not have any confusions when you are working on them, right? So the first thing that I would be using would be dimensions, and in the dimensions I would be taking an array in which I would be taking set of flower brackets. I would be giving it a name, right? And the name would be medicine, right, guys? And in the next line, I would be taking the data. And how do I do that? I would be using value, right? And within value, as we all know how to bind data, we would be using flower bracket, and within flower bracket I would be using the name of my field, which is drug name, control V, control. See, so I've pasted my data here, guys, right? And now I've got to close this, right? So it's already closed, but then just to keep things a bit clear and less confusing, I'll be closing this here. Now again, in the next line, I would be taking measures, right? Again, I would have to do the same drill. Okay, close this with a bracket first, and within measures, I would again be using name, right, guys? Which would be, now you can take revenue or probably cost, and here in the value, you would have to bind with the feed, and here this would be revenue. Perfect. So now let me just close this as well, right? My dimensions is done, measures is done. Now I would just have to define the data path. So this is how it is to be done. You can just define the path here. We've taken the path to be sales, right? So we'll just copy this, Control C /V. Okay, so this part is done. Beautiful, right? So now here is where my data flows, my data set, my variable O data set, right? Which is this. See, you're able to see the cursor showing us. So now I would just have to set data set from my O data set. So we'll see how to do that. O with frame, right, guys? Dot set data, and what is the data that I've got to set? It would be O data set, correct? And in the next step, I would again take my OBS frame dot, and this time I would set the model. What would my model be? It would be O model. Lovely. Right, so now let me save this. So we have the drug name perfectly mapped, we have revenue perfectly mapped, and we have sales, which is the collection, which is name of my collection, right? My entire collection is with the name of sales. So now I'll just go into my application, refresh this, we'll see what are the different errors that we have, and then we'll go into the step 4. So console, it says this frame set data is not a function. One second, where did we do that? Okay, so this is supposed to be set data set, right, guys? So now I'll save this. One error removed, so let me just do that. Good God, we at least do not have an error. So it still says invalid data binding, which means that there is something that is still missing, right? Because when I do F12, I'm not able to see anything here. So which means that there is some process which we're missing. So now let's get into the final part of it, right, guys? So my step 4, which would be to set with properties. And how would I do that? The first thing I'll have to do in order to set my wiz properties would be to come up with some. Okay, let me just take an OVS frame. Let me just check if all the spellings are correct. Yes, I don't think spellings seem a problem. So Control C, Control V. So this is my OVS frame, guys. So I'll set some wiz properties to my OVS frame. Wiz properties, right? Now, in order to set wiz properties, what is it that I'll have to do? Right, so let's start making things dirty for ourselves and the system as well. So the first thing that I would want to give would be a title, right? So here it goes. This would be my title, and here within my title I would be taking a text, right? A very simple text. and I would be giving it a name as revenue. Now that the text is done, let me also give it a plot area. Right, guys? So how do you define your plot area? Well, this is how you do it. Right? So within your plot area, you can define your color palette, and also you can define your drawing effect. So let me just define my color palette. It's PALETTE, guys. Just keep this in mind. So it would be D3 dot. Now, when you say how am I getting this, these values here, well, you can search all that. You would be able to search for all of these in the SDK, right? These are different values, and when you enter different values, you would be able to see different outputs. Now that you have the code with you, I would recommend that you start practicing things, and also that you come up with different changes and observe the behavioral changes and how things would react, or how things might change when you bring about a change in certain features. And when you do things like these, I'm sure you wouldn't take much of a time to understand what SAPUI5 is, right? So now I would be giving the feed size, right? So the feed size now begins, would be new. Now, in order to do that, it would be sap.viz dot ui5 dot controls dot common dot feeds. Well, guys, you got to work on things like these, and when you work on things like these, trust me, your foundation would become very strong. When I started working as an SAP UI5 developer, this is exactly where I went wrong, and I did not have any information about, or any help about how to streamline things, because of which I had to I took it took a very big toll on how I could handle things. So my request to you would be to get things straight, to get your concepts strong, and then start searching for a job, or then start getting disappointed, because technologies nowadays are going very fast, very, very fast. And if you got to match pace with it, you got to be good at what you're doing, A, and B, you got to know what you're doing, right? So yeah, that's a very genuine experienced feedback that I have for all of you. So please, I hope you understand this, right? So this is the revenue. Well, let me now enter a comma here. We'll now give it a feed color, guys. Okay. And when I give a feed color, let me just keep everything the same from here to here. There's just one thing that would change, and that is this, right? But then here, instead of size, I would be giving it color. Instead of measure, I would be giving it dimension. And instead of revenue, I would be giving it medicine. Let's see if we have an output or not. But then, before we do that, there's one last step that you got to do, and that last step would be to add the feed. Okay, so viz frame, right? So my viz frame dot add feed, sorry, and add feed. The first one would be feed size. Done that. Second one would be feed color. Okay, let me just save this. Well, I don't see any errors or any red marks on my screen. So now I would just want to go ahead, refresh things here, be a bit hopeful about what I would be seeing. Going back, refreshing things here now. Well, I have an output. Let me just do F12. Well, it says it's unable to read the property common. So let me just go ahead and see if there's a typo or if there is some other error that I've made. Right, so when it talks about the word common, I see that common, okay, guys, so here I have missed a dot in both of them, and because I've copied the line, I've copied things from here to here, I think that error is still repeating. So here I've taken sap.viz.ui5.controls.common feeds feed item. Now it kind of seems perfect to me. I've saved it. Let's give it one more shot. We'll see if I would be having something. Well, it says there's an error. Well, I just have to go and see. It says feed revenue could not accept more data containers. Well, there's a problem with the containers, so now I'll have to go and check where my containers is going wrong. So let's quickly go back into Eclipse and see where things are going wrong, guys. It says feed revenue could not accept more data containers. So when you talk about feed, there's only two places where feed is happening. So the first feed is happening here and the second feed is happening here, right? And when he says revenue in specific, there's something that's wrong that's happening here, right? So let us just check. So guys, yeah, the error that I'm doing is here when I'm binding, or when I'm giving the value as medicine, which is the name, here I have to give cost as the revenue, which the cost as the value when I've given revenue. So let me just quickly change this to cost. Control C, Control V. I'll save it. Keeping my fingers crossed. Lovely, right? So now that I have my view here, guys, but then there's still some problem. I'm not able to, I'm somehow not liking it. But then before we go into it, let's just see what it would do for me. So when I click on each of them, it would, select different values for me, right? So I select it, it gives me a value. So I select two of them, it gives me two values selected. If I say three, it gives me three values selected. And on the right, it would also highlight for me what are the values selected. And when I go on them, or when I hover, it would give me the value um, of each and every medicine, and how it is like. But then guys, I somehow feel that my view is way too on the left and I want my view to be on the right. I would not say right, but then at least a bit on the center. So how do I do it? In order to do that, I don't have to create another CSS page and do all that drama again. I'll just have to properly space or utilize the properties given for me in my flexbox, which is justify content. And here in justify content, I would be able to do or change this to center, right? So now I'm saving this, going back to my view. Let us just refresh this and see. Perfect. So I have things. And how did I get this revenue as my headline, guys? Any clue? Well, if you just want to know it, the only thing that I'm doing here is, let me go to my code. Here we are adding this as revenue. So let me now just change this to YouTube practice for analytical views. And in this, we've been doing pie chart. Lovely. So I would say you now know how to create views and how to add data into it, how to set feed into it. So you know everything, guys. So this is the view, right? So just to give you a quick walkthrough, I've taken a flexbox, given it an items of an aggregation of items, taken my vis frame, and here I started setting my data inside on init function. So these are on init, on exit, on before rendering, on after rendering. These are the four lifecycle processes that we have in the controller of in JavaScript format in SAPUI5. So firstly, I've called my view with the ID, which is called by ID. The second one, in the second step, I've created a very small data set in JSON format, and I've set that data set to my model. In the third step, I have set the data to the fields, so wherein dimensions and measures would be taking my drug name and revenue, and data would be taking the whole instantiation. And here I'm just setting my properties to the viz, and then we have our output, right? So guys, I really hope that you enjoyed watching and understood how to use the libraries. Well, if in case you have really liked my video, if in case you feel that this might be helpful for you, guys, please do let me know. Please do share this with your friends, and also hit the like button. If you hit the like button, it would really encourage me to make more videos, and also it would give me a quick boost, and it will also let me know that you found the videos useful. If there's any query that you have, feel free to use the comment section below, and also share this with your friends, aspirants, or any other developers who are looking for any help on probably things like these. And if there's anything else that you want, please do let us know in the comment section. Have a great day ahead. This is me, Varun Rao, logging off. Happy coding, happy growing.